Okay, hello everyone. This is Sharonda, and this is my podcast as well as my uh not Facebook, but YouTube channel, Spiritual Sense. Today is Tuesday, July the 9th. And so in this podcast as well as YouTube channel, go over topics involving the paranormal, occult, supernatural, spirituality. I like to start off by saying that this podcast and YouTube is for entertainment, informational, and sometimes educational purposes. So I was going to name the topic for today spiritual manipulation, but I think I'm going to name it spiritual contortion. What is contortion? Well, we know what a contortionist or contortion is. It mentions a twisted or bent condition, state, or form. The skill of twisting and bending one's body into strange or natural position as a form of entertainment. You oftentimes will see this in regarding um, like a lot of the horror movies and paranormal type of documentaries and movies and stuff. And I'm going to give you my spiritual sense as to what exactly my eyes have seen in terms of that. Okay. I do believe it's God given a revelation somehow. Maybe this the wording that I'm given is not the best wording, but that's what I'm going to name it until I think of something otherwise. So, I decided to speak on this because I my child is 8 years old, my daughter, and a lot of things that I experienced, revelations and things that came to me came by way of around that age range. And so it's to give her a sensibility about some things that transpired in my history and my lifespan to give her an understanding as to what was going on or what she was experiencing. Okay. So I am going to speak on this um, topic, referencing back to when she was about 4 or 5 years old, when I decided to have a security camera put into the home. Well, actually, it came with the package. I didn't even think to put a security camera in, but somehow it came with the internet package that I had. And in doing that, I think she began to wonder about um, how the camera worked, if the camera picked up certain images versus not picking up certain images. And I'm going to tell you something was guiding her spirit. I words just can't explain it. The only way I can say it was God, because this child began to move in a fashion that is not natural. I mentioned this in a previous um, episode that I did a couple of years ago about when I initially moved into the home that we was renting. And I think the first time I went to the grocery store after moving into this home, she was at the time had to have been about 3, maybe 4 years old. And I had came back from the grocery store, and I'm in the midst of taking the groceries out of the car and bringing it into the house. And in the midst of doing that, I was in a standstill at the sink. Honest to God, it had to have been, gosh, because I have had this to happen to me a couple of times, but this particular time it had to have been less than a minute. Maybe right at a minute or so. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I was frozen at the sink, and it was like, okay. I couldn't move. It was just like this. Well, after I came out of this trance, I instantly something just moved me. Run outside. I run outside. I didn't hear anything. It was just like a go. And she had managed to run into the street, and it was a car that came, but the car slowed down, and the motion as she is running away from the vehicle was in an unnatural motion. I just instantaneously knew not to feel any type of fear because God had put that within me prior to what transpiring with her. So saying that to say, fast forward to when she began to wonder about the camera and if the camera is working and all of this other stuff. And she just would, it was like a, and she would just, at words just can't explain it. And the motion and how she moved wasn't a natural motion. And I said to myself, this is somehow God giving her revelation because she'll go back, she'll look at the camera, she'll run off, and then it was just like something just pulling her. She'll come back, and then she'll do in such a motion to see, and it was like God was trying to show me that there was some delay in the cameras by her movement, and that's when it became apparent to me that a lot of it is not in real time, if that makes any sense. Like this was him giving me revelation by way of her and her revelation as well, that a lot of things wasn't being done in real time or what have you. I also in the midst of having this camera had some paranormal type of things to occur in a certain direction with this camera. I decided to speak about this because earlier today I was watching YouTube's on Ouija board and the planchette and things of that sort. And I noticed that when I bought the Ouija board, they would get the planchette and it would be point to certain areas within the home. So saying this to say, I do believe that God would put revelation in you by way of your children, by way of the spiritual communication tool to make you aware of some things that you, or to put your focus or attention towards something that you really haven't gave much thought or even emphasis to. So that's how I know that um that's how you're able to gain insight, I feel, about God putting revelation in a person. Like you will begin to see it. It's almost supernatural. The only way I can explain it is by calling it spiritual contortion, um, for a lack of a better word. Um, and she gets in her little fits from time to time, and I have to tell her what it is that she's experiencing and kind of talk her through it and things of that sort. This is just simply God giving you discernment, is what that is. Now, I also am going to say um, that I'm able to see spirit on individual. I think many people are. And I do believe that it's God's way of giving me insight about sensibility about certain things in terms of spiritual awakenings and growth within the individual. So it was a little girl at the last place that I rented. I managed to go to the mailbox. And this may seem like I'm just, oh my gosh, what is your point? I am getting to a point about how God convey things to us. And you begin to scratch your head and say, okay, are the people that are, quote, mentally deemed mentally ill, truly mentally ill. And that's what caused me to forefront this podcast as well as this YouTube channel because of some things that presented to me. Okay. So I went to my mailbox and it's a little girl that stayed in the house next to where I was, goes outside, and the movement and motion as to when this child came outside was unnatural. Words, and I'm speaking about another little girl. Okay, when the child came outside, number one, I could see the clear definitive defining. It was like a long, clear veil. That's the only way I can explain it. And the child moved. It was like kind of similar to like how you would see Frankenstein. It was an unnatural movement. So this is how I knew somehow that this was a message somehow, if that makes any sense to anybody, and that this was being done by way of God, of God. And when the child came out, it was a motion and a movement, and it was a clear, like definitive veil from the top all the way down to the ground. And the little child, who had to have not been no more than about 6 years old, come outside and kind of like in a trance. And the child began to dance in such a fashion. And it was just, and I'm sitting there and I just began to laugh because I knew that it was supernatural. If that makes any sense to anybody, I knew that it was a spirit. I knew that it was a message somehow. And I said to myself, oh my God. Like I could just see it. Words can't explain it. I mean, saying this to say, I had another incident that happened. I'm going out to smoke. I'm working. When I worked at a facility, I go outside to smoke, and all of a sudden, this dog out of nowhere gravitates to me, and it looks like a dog, but somehow I had the sensibility that it was being guided by a spirit, and it gravitated. And then just like like how the dog just would normally just run. It kind of was like defying gravitational pull. So that's what made me take note of it. And the dog grimaced at me and looked at me like, I should be scared of you, and turned around and ran. So that's how I knew that it was spiritual. I mean, words can't explain it. You will begin to see spirits on people, and that's how you will know that somehow this is carrying out either the thoughts or the desire or somehow a message somehow is what I'm conveying again at. It was spiritually guided. I had an incident again. I'm driving down a long stretch road in the country, in another part of the state of where I live, and a dog, again, a spirit, pulls, boom, into my car. Now, it was an old car. I mean, it wasn't like a brand new car or anything of the sort. There wasn't even no damage. And I seen it, I heard it, and I could feel the boom. But when I goes to look, I didn't see the dog. When it gravitated towards my vehicle, words just can't explain. And I'm not saying this to try to be funny or trying to minimize anything, but I did not see it. once that happened. I do believe that those are spirits, and I do believe that spirits can manifest themselves into us as individuals, physical beings, to relate a message. That I do believe. Um, I did do a podcast episode about spiritual manifestation, but I'm giving you a more personal um, sensibility as to what I mean in terms of that. I do believe that negative energy can manifest within us, and God will give you precognition prior to it occurring. That's what I feel. And so that's why I decided to forefront this whole platform with the podcasting and um, the YouTube channel, the Facebook Live, because I'm not that big of a spiritual, I'm not that big of a religious person or biblical person. I do believe in a higher power, and a higher power being God. I do believe that He does allow things to happen to give us revelation about things. I do believe that. So I oftentimes wonder that, are these things happening because of a break in communication, or a need for communication, or whatever the case may be. I do believe that as well. But I'm going to tell you that some things defies what we know as scientifically, logically, um, so facts. And I think that's where spirituality, that gray area, comes in to give an explanation to the inexplicable, something that is abnormal, um, inexplicable, unexplainable, paranormal. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring this to a close, but I'm one of those people. I'm a horror movie buff. I like good horror movies and things of that sort. And I think it's reenactment by movie production, theater, graphic design, or special effect artists and stuff to relate some things to those who may not have seen or may not be aware. Um, but it's something to take note of, I do believe. So I am going to conclude this episode of Spiritual Sense speaking about spiritual contortion, um, what exactly that is. I did have another incident I'm going to share with you, the cigarette smoking, which I know is not kosher, it's not right. I had an incident where I worked at a facility and I went on my lunch break and I proceeded to um, go out to my car to have a smoke on my break. I kid you not. Now, I'm already aware that cigarette smoking is not kosher and it's not favorable. But let me tell you what I proceeded to do. I proceeded to get my cigarette and go put my hand on the lighter. And when I did that, I was stuck in motion for the better part of about 15 seconds, maybe 30 seconds or less. So I do believe that God does give allow things to happen to let you know how He works and how He happens, if that makes any sense to anybody. So I am going to again conclude this episode of Spiritual Sense, speaking about spiritual contortion, to give you a synopsis about the things that you may see in movie production, theater, reenactments, or whatever the case may be. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you're more than welcome to comment below. Until then, have a safe and wonderful day. Good day.